Welcome to A Place for Film, the IU Cinema podcast. On this week's episode, we're talking about our surprises and disappointments of 2012. All right, hello everyone. Welcome to the show. My name is Andy Hunsucker.
And I'm Jason Thompson.
And it's just us this week. All right, well, let's talk about our main topic. Now, we thought about doing like a year in review sort of thing, but we're not a big media market, Jason, so we don't get lots of people have seen Django Unchained and Les Miserables already, and Zero Dark 30, which hasn't come out yet around here. So those are like movies that most people would expect. I'm very much looking forward to Les Miserables. I wouldn't feel right like making a top 10 list of the year or something without having seen some of those movies. So,
and we typically do that around Oscar time anyways.
Yeah.
For the most part.
So we'll do that.
There are some movies that get snubbed, and then those are the ones we get really angry about.
Yes.
And those are usually the top 10 movies of ours. So
exactly.
You can maybe expect that around the late January mark.
So what we agreed to do was we'll talk about the films that surprised us and the films that disappointed us this year.
Okay.
So we can mix these up as much as we want. I'll start with a surprise movie. How about Lockout?
I have that written down. That is funny.
Lockout. You might not have heard of this movie. This is a Guy Pearce movie that came out maybe back in April, May, something like that, March.
Yeah, I think that's about it.
It was earlier in the year, but the trailer made it look awful.
The trailer made it look like Red Dawn. If I'm going to keep referencing something that I think is awful, that's my meter now.
Yeah.
Like that movie is just totally what I can gauge it off of. And you would think if you saw the trailer for Lockout that would be just as bad. Mm-hmm. But it's surprisingly fun. It's a fun movie.
Guy Pearce totally sells it. He makes the movie worth watching. Some of the special effects are truly awful.
Oh, they are.
But some of them are actually pretty good.
Yeah.
So it's a weird mixture, but in the end, it totally works. Even though you watch the trailer and you're like, isn't this just Escape from New York on a spaceship?
Don't trust the trailer. If you want to rent something, I'd say
it's on Netflix.
It is on Netflix.
Yeah.
It's on Netflix, or if you want to, I don't know, it may still be at the Redbox. I don't know.
Yeah, maybe.
If you see it somewhere, definitely go watch it. I mean, it's one that you probably want to watch somebody else. It's a fun movie.
Yes.
It's surprisingly enough. And honestly, what I was thinking is if they just took that same character that Guy Pearce plays and just put him in a different kind of movie, I'd watch it.
I would too.
That character that he came up with is something refreshing, I think.
Yeah,
especially for the action genre.
He's been in a bunch of good movies. Well, not good movies, but he's been the best thing in a lot of movies this year. He was in that Lawless movie that I saw. He was one of the best things in that movie. The rest of the movie was not that great, but he was really great in it.
Yeah.
So Guy Pearce, all the way. I'm a big fan.
Yeah, he's doing all right. Let's see. Technically, Haywire came out this year.
Yeah.
Which was a really big surprise for me. Never got around to seeing it in the theater. Heard a lot of really good things, but just the general reception to it was just low. But caught it. Actually, I may have just bought this straight out and watched it, if I'm not mistaken. I don't think I rented it. So I'm pretty sure I just kind of took a risk on this one, watched it, and loved it. Mm-hmm. So I really recommend that one. You mentioned Channing Tatum and Magic Mike. Channing Tatum is in this movie. He has a much smaller role in this movie. But another Soderbergh film. Yeah. And
he's becoming Soderbergh's pet actor. There's another Soderbergh film coming out in a few months that he's in.
Yeah, and so, it's a different sort of... let's think about, spy movies. You got, the James Bond series, which is, has a new movie out this year. And then you've got the other spy movie that came out earlier this year. Was it earlier this year?
I think in Tinker Tailor
Soldier Spy. So you got that. This movie kind of falls in between those two.
Yeah.
Which is really fun. Because some people probably can't, watch Tinker Tailor,
It's completely baffling.
Very cerebral. And then, Skyfall, although, very cerebral on its own, pretty, Hollywood.
Yeah.
This one, like I said, falls kind of in between that. And I found it really refreshing. My wife was very confused by it. I don't think she caught on to because the movie doesn't just sit there kind of like, Lincoln would and say, this is what we're going to, or Saving Private Ryan will say that, like, this is how everything's going to play out now. It just doesn't stop. It just goes from one to the other. And I guess Tinker Tailor's kind of the same way.
Yeah.
or things just happen and they don't really try to explain or sit
Yeah.
there and some
Well,
character's not talking about it.
Let's be clear. Tinker Tailor leaves lots of information out, seemingly on purpose,
Sure.
just to confuse you.
Sure. Well, and I think this movie kind of does too. I mean, it definitely there's definitely ways of piecing it together, but I think the action may sort of blind you to some of what's going on. So she got a little confused by it. So then I had to kind of explain to her a little bit what happened. And that's nothing against her. It's just the movie's kind of like that. So if you're not keeping up with it, like if you go and like out of the room and like, oh, I'm going to get a drink of water, like, but don't do that. Like, commit to the full running time of this movie and you won't regret it. So.
Yeah. I mean, the biggest disappointment of the year for me, I mean, it's got to be Prometheus, considering a movie that I thought would be great and what actually it ended up being. That's got to be the biggest disappointment of the year for me.
Yeah.
And I own the movie on Blu-ray and I've watched it again. And
so they got you.
Yeah, I think it's still like a decent movie, but from my expectations to where it actually was just unreal.
I think the biggest disappointment was the fact that Ridley Scott was very adamant that this was not an Alien sequel or a prequel.
Yeah.
If he hadn't said that, I don't think I would have been as disappointed.
Yeah.
Really, I really wouldn't have been. If he would have been like, oh, yep, this is a direct prequel to what all happened in Alien, or even didn't say anything about it at all, just said, I'm not going to tell you. You're going to go see the movie. I think it was the fact that I was anticipating it so much, and then it basically became like literally the last shot is Ridley Scott just giving you the middle finger.
Yeah.
Like all that stuff I said before, sorry about you.
Yeah.
Like here it is. It's just like, really, you did that.
Well, and I wonder if I would have enjoyed it more if they had just abandoned any pretense, any link to the Alien film, because clearly this film did have a lot to do with the alien mythos and the planets and all of that. If they just abandoned that, just done a sci-fi movie in that vein, we all would have said, oh, this is kind of borrowing a lot from Alien, but I think we would have liked it more.
Right. I agree.
So,
and there was just some scenes in the movie that were just completely like laughable. And, and the editing was very choppy. I don't know. Is there a director's cut of the movie on the Blu-ray?
There is some extra scenes. I didn't watch it with the extra scenes.
But it's pretty much the theatrical cut that you saw? Okay.
I think it's got like extra footage, but it's not a reworking of the film.
I got you. Okay. So I don't know if there's anything that could save it for me.
Yeah.
Like I said, that last shot was just...
Yeah.
I never actually explained it as a middle finger, but that's just like what I see in my head. Like that's just the alien world version of that, literally. So...
Yeah.
Another movie that really, really worked for me was The Gray, Liam Neeson movie. Blew me away. Trailer does not do this movie justice. You really can't explain this movie to anyone other than Liam Neeson's character gets lost in the woods after a plane crash with a bunch of other people, and wolves are hunting them. That is literally the premise of the movie. You wouldn't think it's very interesting, but it's such an amazing character piece. It really is. And what's really interesting, I talked earlier about Sometimes a Great Notion. There's a scene in that movie that really, which is in the 1971 movie, takes the scene in The Gray where the guy's foot gets caught in a log underwater, and Liam Neeson's character's like struggling to help him. There's a scene like that in Sometimes a Great Notion, and it is the most like intense scene in a movie I've seen in a long time. So it was funny. Last night I was watching that, and I thought, I got to talk about The Gray. I was like, that movie was, if not the number one surprise movie for me, pretty close to it. Because I just kind of went like, because I'd seen Neeson and Taken. And you kind of thought like, okay, he's jumping back on the, action horse a little bit, playing kind of like a badass. Where in this movie, he kind of like, it's like a slow burn. Like there's something brewing under there, and it's like he's trying to get these people through the wilderness because that's sort of who his character is, and it's just like, and one by one things happen, and you're like, oh man, where's this movie going? And then like you totally anticipate it going the direction that it does, and you're like, okay, like I am totally okay with this. So it's very interesting. I love it, and it's if you've ever seen I I can't remember what it is on YouTube. It's the 6-hour video of staring into Liam
I've heard
Neeson's
of that,
eyes.
yeah.
It's from The Gray.
Yeah.
And it's amazing. I really wish I could make it like if my TV had a screensaver. That's what my TV would have on it at all times when I'm not doing something.
Yeah.
It's pretty awesome. So I really, really recommend that movie. I don't know if a lot of people got to seeing it, but
Yeah.
not a very big Hollywood type movie, so that probably had something to do with it. But I'm very happy I saw that one in theaters.
Yeah. One that disappointed me, which is one that's been on a lot of people's top 10 lists that I've seen, is Beasts of the Southern Wild. This was one that had a lot of buzz around it. I think it was at maybe Sundance, and everyone saw it and was like, oh, this is the one you got to see. And it came to the cinema, and I watched it, and it was this weird like disconnect because people were like in the audience. I saw in the lobby were like, "We're coming. This is the second night. We were here last night. We just had to see it again." And I watched the whole movie, and at the end of it, I just felt like that's what everyone's been talking about. I didn't have the experience that everyone else had. I think it's an interesting movie, and I think it's sort of unlike a lot of other things. Like it's hard to it's hard to describe really what is going on. It's sort of like looking at a different world, like a world that I've never experienced before. But I just didn't have the it didn't draw me in the way it drew in a lot of other people this year. So,
yeah, I didn't see it, so it didn't draw me in. Let's see, 21 Jump Street.
That's on my list too.
You've got to see this movie. Watched it the other night. Actually watched all the deleted scenes with it as well. There were some that didn't need to be on there, so they did a good job at selecting some of the movies. But one of those movies where honestly I was expecting it to be funny, but I was not expecting it to be as funny as it is.
I think it's probably the funniest movie of the year.
I think so too.
I really do.
I cannot stop recommending the movie to everybody because some people you just really have to sell it to them. I'm like, I was like, just watch it.
Yeah.
Just watch it. And like, if you hate it, then I'll owe you one.
Yeah.
And so far, nobody has come back and been like, I hated it, man. It was the worst movie I've ever seen, or even just a bad movie.
Yeah.
It is a really fun movie. It's just hilarious. And again, guess who's in it? Channing Tatum. So it's just like, I feel like he's really knocking them out of the park this year. Another movie I really liked was Chronicle.
Which was...
I wasn't really blown away by it, but I really liked it. The movie where these three guys it's sort of that found footage.
Oh, the superhero thing.
The superhero, with these high school guys. What I really impressed with was how they use that found footage aspect of it. I think it's one of the strongest examples of that genre, because it is a genre now in a really long time.
Yeah.
Like if I were to classify it, I mean, I would probably put it just below Blair Witch Project. The only reason why I'm putting Blair Witch above it is just because of what it did. What it did for, like, it invented its own genre. Just the way they manipulate the camera work throughout the movie, and also try to tell a really interesting story at the same time. Sort of this teenage angst movie is really interesting. And so I would recommend that one. It gets a little loose at the end, but and the guy who is the main character in Chronicle will be playing Harry Osborn in the next Spider-Man movie.
Okay.
So that role, I mean, and it makes a lot of sense. If you see Chronicle, you can definitely see sort of that character of Harry Osborn sort of brewing underneath. So
cool.
If you just happen to see it and you've got a couple hours, I recommend it. I think on a technical standpoint, I think it does a lot that I hadn't really seen Hollywood trying to do.
Yeah.
So
I'm not going to linger on it. I just want to bring up Dark Shadows again because it's such an awful movie.
Your Dark Shadows is my Red Dawn, I think.
Really?
I think so.
I don't know, because you seem to kind of like at least making fun of it. I was just so beaten down by the experience of Dark Shadows. I agree that we both probably hated those movies equally, but there's some little difference there. I don't know what it is, but it feels worse to me because it's my perspective. But
yeah, I was at I think I was at a theater. I think I was at Red Dawn. some guy was talking about Dark Shadows, and he was talking about how he liked it, and all I could hear in my head was you screaming. little Andy in my head just like... and then I experienced Red Dawn, so maybe it was like my early warning detection.
People who like Dark Shadows also like Red Dawn. He's like, bolt.
Yeah, exactly. He started talking about it, and I was like, oh, surely he's throwing this thing under the bus. I was like, I can't wait. And he's like, he legitimately enjoyed the movie, and I'm just like, and I haven't even seen it yet, so I couldn't really like be angry at him, but I trust you more than I trust that guy. So I was just like, dude, what's wrong?
Hey, if you wanna see Dark Shadows, you go right ahead. You don't trust me? Give it a shot.
You might want to have your doctor on standby, just in case.
And I'm going to throw in one last surprise here. This is a whole director. I saw one director's entire body of work this year. I knew nothing about him before this year started. Now I'm a big fan. Whit Stillman.
Okay, yeah.
Whit Stillman was at the cinema earlier this year. He had a new film come out, Damsels in Distress, which probably would make my top 10 list, honestly. I loved that movie so much. I loved everything about it. And his other 3 films, each one I liked better and better than the last. So it just kept getting better for me that weekend. And I'd seen I watched all 4 of his films at the cinema that weekend. Which I normally don't do. Even if you know it's a director I really like, I'll pick out like 2 or 3 of whatever.
Sure.
Usually there's 5 or 6, and I'll pick out 2 or 3 to go see, and that's it. Because you know who has time? But I went to see every single one of those movies, and really loved all of them. Last Days of Disco, I think, is probably my favorite, just from an overall perspective.
Sure.
But yeah, I think Whit Stillman, big surprise for me this year. I had no idea who he was, and I got to interview him and email back and forth with him a little bit. So, big fan of Whit Stillman.
Cool. I have one more that I liked and one more that I didn't like. So I guess I'll go with the one I liked. Keep that momentum going on my end. I really liked Looper. Yeah. I know there are a lot of people that will point at things that were sort of off or not right about the movie because it's dealing with time travel, and there will never be a perfect time travel movie. I'm sorry, unless you actually film somebody going through time, and then there's your evidence. So, or some people would say Back to the Future, but come on, we could argue all night, but we're not going to. But I really, really liked it. I thought Joseph Gordon-Levitt just did a fantastic job at selling the character, sort of selling a younger Bruce Willis. I think the makeup and sort of his sort of, I guess, vocal patterns really kind of helped me think that, yes, that was a young Bruce Willis that they managed to sort of clone or something and put him in front of you and run with it. But at the same time, he's his own character, which is really interesting too. Like, you know, that's Joseph Gordon-Levitt, but they do a really good job at connecting the two. It hasn't come out on DVD yet, has it? Okay.
I've been looking for it. I've been looking for Dread as well. It's not out yet.
Dude, I'm so glad you mentioned that, because I was like, surely I'll remember that one, and I have to write it down. So yeah, Looper, see it, but Dread, oh my gosh, watch it and love it. It's, I would say, out of everything I saw outside of possibly 21, because I knew I knew I was anticipating 21 Jump Street to at least be funny. I was not anticipating Dread to be as good as it was. I was expecting it just to be kind of like, and then someone was like, "It's a really good movie. You should go see it." And then I was like, "Okay, I'll go see it." And then like, even my high expectations weren't as high as what, and I'm perfectly fine with somebody going to see it and being like, "That Jason guy doesn't know what he's talking about," because you may not have liked it as much as I did, but that's just expectations. You know? My expectations were so low for it, and then they slowly got built up, and then I think I saw it just at the right time. But just a really interesting action movie. Yeah, it really is. I mean, it's funny because we saw Lockout, and it reminds me of a really good Lockout. It just does. It just has that vibe, and it sells it. And Carl Urban just owns the character, like just blows Sly Stallone's version of the character out of the water. Like, there's no comparison. And it's because he doesn't say that much. Whereas like Stallone had to have all the one-liners, and I was just, you know. Even then, I didn't think that was a good movie. So this one, I hope they make another one or do something else with the character and allow him to flesh that out even further. So yeah, Dread. I'm glad you mentioned that, because I would have totally not given it the love that it should get. The other movie I know we're torn on is Cabin in the Woods.
Yeah.
And the only reason why I really there's two reasons why I didn't like the movie. I didn't really like the ending. I thought the ending was silly and almost offensive to me as just a person, and we don't have to get into it. And then I also thought that about 2/3 through the movie, that should have been where the movie started. I thought.
Okay.
Where like everything goes crazy.
So yeah. So if you haven't seen Cabin in the Woods, there's a twist to it, but we're not going to worry about that. It's been out on DVD for like 6 months.
Sure.
So yeah. So you're saying like when they sort of reveal, they open up the curtain and realize what's happening behind the scenes. That's what you're talking about.
Yeah, and where all the monsters get loose.
Yeah.
Like I would have enjoyed that as a movie.
Yeah.
I don't know why. It's just very.
I think I get that, and I think I just watched the Blu-ray with the commentary. So what they were trying to do, and if you don't like it, you don't like it. But what they were trying to do was they were trying to make a by the numbers standard teen horror movie, then with the things behind it.
Yeah, but I can go watch it by the number. There's thousands of those.
Yeah.
on Netflix. I know because I've been watching them and not talking to you people about it. I'm so sorry.
I'm just
guilty
saying
pleasure.
That's what they were looking. That's what they were hoping to do. They wanted to make that movie.
What I really wish they would have done though, and this would have been the ballsiest thing to do, because I don't think the teen horror movie they made was that great. What they should have done was they should have aimed to make a great teen horror movie, just a by the numbers movie, blown it out of the water, and then cut you off from it and be like, no, now you're gonna watch this. That I would have been like amazed with, but it was just such a boring, dry by the numbers movie. With every now and then you go back to this thing, it's like I really just want to see that. I just really want to see sort of the behind the scenes stuff.
Yeah.
So I don't know, but like I said, I wasn't as that isn't as. The ending is still what really bothers me the most. I'm just kind of like, really? Like, he went that way? Like, it's...
Yeah, I think the moment Sigourney Weaver appears on screen is the moment it dies a little for me.
Yeah.
So...
It's just, I guess when we're spoiling it, it's basically, it's a religious thing for me. It's just kind of like, oh, that's your explanation for it. Like, I don't know if the idea had been introduced sooner, like if I was in on it.
Yeah.
Earlier, I think I would have been okay with it, but it was just kind of comes out of left field.
Yeah.
And like, it's like, oh, we got Sigourney Weaver for like a day and a half.
Yeah.
And we don't have to pay her that much? Okay, bring her in. She'll sell it. And it's like, no. She's done that in a couple other movies too, where she just randomly shows up, it seems like, and plays a little bit part and goes away.
She does the same thing in...
There is a movie, I just can't think of it.
Paul.
Yeah, exactly. Yep. Almost exact same character.
Yeah.
So yeah.
I understand your objections to it. I think the behind the scenes stuff puts it over the top for me. I loved what they did, but I agree with you that the last 5 minutes are like, really? That's what you were building towards this whole time?
Right.
So yeah,
I think I would have been maybe more okay with the movie if it had just kind of played it as just a hum ho. Like, this is what's happening. Oh, and now this is happening. This is fun.
Yeah.
And then just found a way of wrapping that up without explaining the whole process. I don't know. It was just very strange.
Yeah. So let's get out of here.
All right.
So I'm Andy.
And I'm Jason.
This has been, and always will be, A Place for Film. A Place for Film is recorded at WFIU Studios in Bloomington, Indiana.